The rain on the Chicago skyscraper's window looked like melting silver. It was Tuesday, October 7th, 2025, 7:52 p.m., and from the 43rd floor, the city lights blurred into a watercolor painting of gold and red. Alex Turner tightened his grip on the cold glass of his IPA, the condensation making his fingers slippery. He was surrounded by the buzz of a rooftop networking event for clean tech professionals. The air smelled like expensive perfume, hoppy beer, and the faint, damp wool of raincoats. He'd been here for 47 minutes. In that time, he'd had 2 conversations. The first was with a woman named Anya, who listened politely to his summary of his project management role at a sustainability startup, nodded, and then said, "Excuse me, I need to find my colleague." The second was with a man whose name Alex forgot immediately, who talked nonstop about blockchain applications for carbon credits for 6 minutes, before literally turning his back mid-sentence to greet someone else. Now Alex stood by a tall, potted fern, trying to look purposefully alone. He watched clusters of people form and reform like magnetic schools of fish. Their laughter was a sharp, percussive sound against the low hum of conversation. He took a sip of his beer. It had gone warm and bitter. This was the 3rd event this month. His calendar was a mosaic of colored blocks, work meetings, project deadlines, and these optimistic, lonely purple slots labeled Industry Connect. He was doing everything the career blog said. He had a good job, he was competent, he showed up. But standing there, feeling the chill from the window seep through his suit jacket, he felt a hollow kind of loneliness. It was the loneliness of being visible but unseen, of being heard but not listened to. His phone, a sleek black rectangle in his pocket, hadn't vibrated once. He'd checked 3 times. He remembered his reflection in his apartment mirror just 2 hours ago. Tying his tie, practicing his confident but approachable smile. "Just be yourself," he'd muttered. But which self? The professional self, packed with data points and achievements? The casual self? It all felt like a performance, and he was terrified the audience could see his script. He watched a group nearby. A woman told a story, her hands painting pictures in the air. The circle leaned in, their faces open and bright. Alex knew he had stories too. He'd led a project that reduced a client's energy use by 18%. He'd backpacked through Chile. But every time he tried to share, it landed with a thud like a rock thrown into mud. His words felt transactional, like he was handing out business cards made of sentences. What if your ambition is actually making you forgettable? The thought came, unbidden and uncomfortable. It wasn't about being unsuccessful. It was about being unremembered. He could feel the familiar, anxious script running in his head. Okay, next person. Lead with the Chile story? No, too personal. Lead with the 18% stat. Follow up by asking about their Q4 goals. Remember to smile, it was exhausting. His shoulders were up near his ears with tension. The din of the room started to feel less like a buzz and more like a wall of static. He looked at his phone again. The screen showed a notification from a workgroup chat, a cascade of reactions to a project update. 12 unread messages. He was included, but he wasn't in asterisk. Last weekend, his only human interactions had been with the barista who made his oat milk latte and the delivery app driver who left his Thai food at the door. He'd eaten at his coffee table, watching a documentary, the glow of the screen the brightest thing in his apartment. This was the before picture, and it stung with recognition. It wasn't dramatic failure. It was a quiet, persistent ache of missed connections. It was the 4th time this year a coworker had said, "We should grab coffee," and the conversation had just evaporated. It was watching inside jokes form around him like bubbles he couldn't pop. It was the specific frustration of knowing you have value to offer, but feeling like you're speaking a slightly different language than everyone else. He finished the warm beer, the bitterness coating his tongue. Across the room he saw Anya, the woman from his first conversation, now deep in animated discussion with 2 others. She was smiling freely, a different smile than the polite one she'd given him. He felt a hot pinch of envy, followed by a colder wash of confusion. What did she know that he didn't? What was the secret code? A server glided by with a tray of empty glasses, the clinking sound like sharp little bells. The event was winding down. Alex's one goal to have one meaningful conversation felt further away than ever. He'd spoken to two people. He'd exchanged zero meaningful details. He'd made zero impression. He was a ghost in a room full of living people. He believed deeply that getting ahead was about proving your worth, that likability was a bonus you earned after demonstrating competence. So he led with his resume even when his words weren't about work. He waited for his turn to talk, to showcase. He treated every handshake like an audition, and it was leaving him standing alone by a fern in a room full of people with a hollow feeling in his chest. He slipped his phone out one last time, no new messages. Just the time, 8:23 p.m., the rain was still streaking the window, distorting the beautiful city below. He had a presentation first thing tomorrow. He should head home, review his slides, be prepared, be competent. The sensory details of this trap are so specific. It's the feeling of your phone buzzing in your pocket during a lull in conversation, and the almost irresistible itch to check it, not for the notification but for an escape, for proof that you're needed elsewhere. It's the sound of your own rehearsed laugh, coming out at the wrong time, a hollow sound that echoes in your own ears. It's the physical tension in your shoulders and jaw when someone shares something personal, a worry, a dream, a simple bad day, and your internal machinery scrambles to match their vulnerability with an equal or greater achievement. You can't just say, "That sounds really hard." You feel compelled to say, "That sounds really hard. I remember when I faced an even bigger challenge." But what if there was another way? What if you could just be a person? The turning point for Jessica, the one that started the crack in her trap, didn't happen in a boardroom. It happened on a delayed flight from Denver to Seattle in mid-November. A snowstorm had grounded everything. The airport was a zoo of frustration, a symphony of sighing and announcement chimes. Jessica, Typa and furious, was practically vibrating with stress. She had a critical meeting in Seattle. This delay was ruining everything. She sat on the floor near a power outlet, angrily typing on her laptop. Next to her, two older women from Minnesota, who were also delayed, started talking. Not about the delay, not about work. One pointed to the other's knitting. "Marge, that yarn color is just like the sunrise over Mill Lacs Lake last October," and they were off. They talked about that lake, about the wild rice harvest, about a bakery that made cinnamon rolls the size of a dinner plate. They shared a bag of cheese curds. Their conversation had no agenda. No one was trying to impress the other. They were just sharing the simple, warm fabric of human experience. Jessica couldn't help but listen. And as she listened, she felt her own tight shoulders begin to drop, just a millimeter. Their voices were calm, warm, like honey. They asked each other gentle, curious questions. "What did your granddaughter think of the new puppy? Did your husband finally fix that garden shed?" There was no transactional feel. It was a back-and-forth dance of sharing and curiosity. They were utterly present with each other in the middle of a chaotic airport. And it hit Jessica like a physical ache. She couldn't remember the last time she had a conversation like that. One that didn't serve a purpose. One that was just about connection for its own sweet sake. These two strangers, with their Midwest accents and their shared bag of cheese curds, were more connected in that moment than Jessica had been with anyone in months. They weren't networking, they were just being nice, genuinely, warmly nice. That's the first glimpse of the what if. What if the goal isn't to be impressive, but to be interested? What if you walked into a room and your only job was to notice people, to be genuinely curious about them without needing anything from them? It sounds simple, almost too simple. But for someone like Jessica or Alex, who spent years believing their value is in their output, it's a revolutionary idea. It means putting down the weight of your own resume. It means quieting the voice that's constantly scripting your next brilliant point. It means trusting that you are enough even when you're just listening. Jessica closed her laptop. She didn't talk to the women, she just absorbed the lesson. The strings on her marionette felt looser. For the first time in a long time, she took a deep, full breath that didn't feel like it was for a performance. The what if was now a quiet little seed, planted in the stressed soil of her mind. What if she tried that? Just for one conversation? Not to be successful, but to be human. And that's where the real change begins. Not with a grand gesture, but with a single, quiet question you ask yourself before you speak. The question ISN to, what can I say that will make them think I am smart? The new question, the scary, freeing question, is much simpler. What about this person can I be genuinely curious about? That seed, that small shift, is where the trap's lock starts to break, because you can't perform curiosity. You can't fake genuine interest. You either feel it or you don't. And the wild thing is, when you start looking for it, you find it everywhere. In the barista's choice of music, in your coworker's weird mug, in the way someone's face lights up when they talk about their hobby. You just have to be brave enough to stop selling and start seeing. So the next time you're in a room full of people and you feel those old, familiar strings start to pull you into performance mode, remember the two women in the airport. Remember that the most powerful thing you might do is to put your own agenda down. And with a warm, open heart, just ask about the sunrise over a lake. The connection that grows from that simple act is stronger than any transaction, and it's the first, beautiful step out of the trap. The first crack in the wall doesn't look like much. It's just a thin line, but it's where the light gets in. For Alex, that light started in a place he'd been 100 times before, the Daily Grind coffee shop on the first floor of his office building. It was a Thursday morning in late October, the air outside crisp enough to see your breath. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of roasted beans and steamed milk, a comforting, familiar fog.
He was next in line, his mind already vaulting ahead to his 9:30 a.m. project sync. He was rehearsing his opening points in his head. The barista, a woman named Chloe, whose name he knew only from her tag, was working the espresso machine with a quiet, focused rhythm. The hiss of steam, the clink of ceramic, the soft tap-tap as she leveled the coffee grounds. As she turned to hand a latte to the previous customer, Alex saw it. On her forearm, just below the rolled-up sleeve of her flannel shirt, was a tattoo. It wasn't big or flashy. It was a simple, elegant line drawing of a mountain range, with one peak slightly taller than the others, a tiny stylized sun rising behind it. The old Alex, the one operating on autopilot, would have barely registered it. He'd have ordered his usual oat milk cappuccino, maybe given a tight smile, and been on his way, his brain still back in that meeting agenda. But the question from the airport, Jessica S. question, was whispering in his ear. What about this person can I be genuinely curious about? He felt a ridiculous internal lurch. It was a physical sensation, like his social muscles were rusty and creaking. His brain, trained for efficiency, screamed, "This is pointless, small talk. You have a meeting about Q3 projections in 42 minutes. This does not advance any goals." He could feel his body wanting to pivot, to get back to the substantive topics of his day. His fingers tightened on his phone, but he remembered the marionette strings. He felt them pull, and for the first time, he consciously decided to not follow them. "Good morning," Chloe said, her voice pleasantly neutral, already turning to the cups. "Morning," Alex said. His own voice sounded strange to him. He took a breath. "I have to ask, that mountain range on your arm, it's beautiful line work. Is there a particular range?" He didn't add, "Have you been there?" He didn't pivot to, "Oh, I love hiking in Chile." He just asked the question and then stopped. He forced himself to look at her, to be quiet, and to wait. Chloe paused. She looked at him, and for a second her professional mask softened into something more genuine. A small, real smile touched her eyes. "Oh, thanks," she said, glancing at her arm. "Yeah, it's the Teton Range, in Wyoming. My dad and I did a hike there every summer when I was a kid. That's Cascade Canyon." She pointed to a specific line. Took the artist 3 sessions to get the lines that clean. Alex didn't know what to say. The old script was blank, so he just listened. He nodded. He followed her finger. "It looks like a peaceful place," he offered, and it wasn't a line. He meant it. The simple image did look peaceful. "It is," she said, her voice warmer now. "Even when it's crowded, there's a quiet up there. Your usual? Oat milk cappuccino?" "Yes, please," Alex said, and he felt a tiny, almost imperceptible shift. The transaction, money for coffee, was still happening. But something else had happened first. A tiny, human connection. It had taken maybe 90 seconds. He took his coffee, their fingers brushing slightly on the warm cup. "Thanks, Chloe. Have a great day." "You too, Alex," she said. He stopped. She'd used his name. He'd been coming here for 6 months, and she'd never used his name before. It was a small thing, a tiny, microscopic victory. But in that moment it felt enormous. It was a signal, a little green light in the fog. You were seen. He carried that feeling to his 9:30 meeting. He walked in, and instead of immediately launching into his points, he looked at Samir, the colleague he'd steamrolled before. Samir was looking tired, rubbing his forehead. "Rough morning?" Alex asked, and this time he really waited for the answer. Samir sighed. "Yeah, the baby was up every 2 hours. It's a special kind of exhaustion." The old Alex would have jumped in with, "I know how you feel. I was up late finishing those decks." But he didn't. He just said, "That sounds brutal. I hope you get some relief tonight." That was it. No comparison. No making it about himself. Just an acknowledgement. Samir gave him a look of genuine gratitude. "Thanks, man. Means someone notices." The meeting proceeded. Alex still gave his update. He was still competent, but he felt different, lighter. The weight of constantly performing was just a little bit less. He was practicing the first of the 3 skills without even fully knowing it yet. The observational compliment. Not a generic, "I like your tattoo," but a specific, detailed observation that showed he was paying attention. "That's beautiful line work. Is there a particular range?" It's a question that comes from noticing, not from agenda. This is where 95% of people quit, because it feels weird. It feels inefficient. Your brain, trained for the hustle culture of 2025, tells you this is a waste of precious time. It whispers that you should be optimizing, not observing. It creates resistance that feels like a physical wall. You'll feel the urge to check your phone, to cut the conversation short, to get back to the real work. You have to push through that resistance. You have to understand that this is the real work, the work of being human. Let's pull the camera in close. Let's look at the details of that struggle. It's in Alex's hands, wrapped around that coffee cup, knuckles white, before he asked the question. It's in the slight pause in Chloe's movement, the moment where she decided this customer was actually seeing her, not just her function. It's in Samir's face, the subtle release of tension around his eyes when his struggle was acknowledged without competition. It's the sound of a name being used for the first time. A simple 2-syllable word that suddenly carries the weight of recognition. The skill is simple, but it's not easy. Here's the actionable step, the exact one Alex stumbled into. Before you speak, identify one specific, non-physical detail about the person or their immediate environment. Then be quiet. Let them respond. Why does this work? It was small, but it was real. He learned something else that day. But a new question immediately rose up in his mind, a practical one. The cliffhanger wasn't about a big, dramatic moment anymore. It was about the next natural step. He'd learned to see. The first was the one he'd stumbled into, the observational compliment. To keep it going, he needed the second skill, the reciprocal question ladder. And then, and only then, you can match it with equivalent vulnerability from your own life. Enter the third skill, the graceful exit. This was about honoring the connection without forcing it into a fake future. The formula was a 30-second warning, plus genuine appreciation, plus a specific, low-pressure next step. The connection had a thread to follow. Now let's be brutally honest. This was not a smooth, upward climb. The key wasn't to avoid failure. It was to recover from it. You could hurt yourself. He heard about a trend among his peers in other cities. Social skill gyms. The difference was night and day. Practicing alone, he felt every mistake intensely.
His calendar underwent a quiet revolution. Where he once had back-to-back work blocks in solid blue, he now saw sprinkled 15-minute coffee connects in soft green. He had one weekly practice lunch in orange, where he'd take a colleague or someone from his social skill gym to a casual spot and just talk, no agenda beyond using his skills. The surprising statistic that kept him going came from the Stanford Social Neuroscience Lab in 2025. Professionals who practice one micro-social skill daily for 28 days report a 40% reduction in social burnout at work events. Alex felt it. The rooftop mixer that had drained him in October was now, in late November, just another place to practice. It was work, but it wasn't torture. It was the satisfying work of building something. He was winning the daily war, brick by brick, conversation by conversation. The walls he'd built around himself were coming down, not with a wrecking ball, but with a steady, gentle touch. He was becoming someone who could walk into a room and not see a room full of judges, but a room full of stories waiting to be heard. But then a new and unexpected feeling began to creep in. It wasn't anxiety. It was a kind of nervous excitement mixed with a dash of fear. People were starting to see him back. They remembered his name. They sought him out. They began to tell him things, real things. Not just project updates, but doubts about their careers, worries about their parents, joys about their hobbies. He was becoming trustworthy, likable in a real way. And that's when he faced the new cliffhanger, the one that comes after you learn the skills. What happens when people actually start to believe you're a safe person to talk to? What do you do with that trust? The war for a connection was being won. But a new campaign was beginning, the campaign of being a person who could handle the truth, the vulnerability and the responsibility that comes with real likability. He was no longer invisible. And being seen, he was starting to realize, is just the beginning. It was a Tuesday in mid-December, just before the holidays. The same Chicago rooftop venue, now strung with delicate glowing lights that looked like captured stars against the twilight. The air was colder, crisp, but the space inside was warm with the hum of another networking event. Alex walked in, but this time he didn't feel the familiar clutch in his stomach. He didn't scan for a fern to hide near. He took a deep breath, smelling the pine garlands and hot cider, and he simply entered the room. He'd been practicing for 90 days, not perfectly, but consistently, and the results were no longer just feelings. They were tangible things he could point to. 3 weeks earlier, he'd had a casual coffee connect with Maya from marketing, the one who loved podcasts. He'd used his skills, noticed her new recording microphone on her desk, asked curious questions about her editing process, shared his own struggle to learn guitar. No agenda, just conversation. Last week, she'd Slack messaged him out of the blue. Hey Alex, I was just talking to a friend at Green Horizon Ventures. They're desperate for a project. Manager who can communicate clearly with both engineers and clients. I immediately thought of you. Can I make an intro? It was an unexpected referral, born from no ask, just genuine connection. Then the following Monday, an invitation landed in his inbox. It was for an exclusive quarterly industry dinner series at the Cherry Circle Room, a classic Chicago spot. The subject line read, "You've been recommended, previously." An invite like that required a VP-level title or a direct vendor relationship. He'd gotten it because a senior architect practiced his reciprocal question ladder with over 3 lunches remembered him as thoughtful, as a good listener. At work, the ripple effects were quiet but powerful. His one-on-one meetings with his direct reports changed. He used his observational skills. "You seem really energized about this design sprint. What's lighting you up about it?" He used the question ladder. He listened. His team's voluntary turnover rate, which had been creeping up, dropped by 15% in one quarter. In his annual review, his manager wrote, "Alex has shown unexpected leadership in fostering team cohesion and psychological safety." The skills he was using to make friends were making him a better leader. But the most profound change wasn't on a spreadsheet. It was a Friday evening. He was leaving the office and Samir, his once exhausted colleague, fell into step beside him. "Some of us are grabbing a drink at the place around the corner. No shop talk. Just decompressing. You in?" For the first time in years, Alex's Friday calendar wasn't a default appointment with his couch and the streaming service. It was an optional, actual social event. And he wanted to go. The skills had stopped being skills he practiced and started being just how he was. He wasn't doing Minnesota nice. He was becoming a more observant, more curious, more graceful version of himself. And that version had more space, more mental space, more emotional space because he wasn't constantly draining his energy on performance. That freed up creativity spilled into his actual work. He proposed a new client onboarding system that was 30% more efficient, inspired by a conversation he had with a teacher in his social gym about first-day rituals. This is the new normal. It's not about being the life of the party. It's about being the heart of a community. It's walking into a room and knowing you have a simple, reliable process for connecting. See, ask, listen, gracefully exit. It's confidence built on competence in humanity, not just in tasks.